Hello. I hope everybody is doing well today, and I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy during this time of pandemic crisis. Now, today we are here to talk about superbugs in the modern era, or antibiotic resistant bacteria. And I'd like to start off with this quote: "If we use antibiotics when not needed, we may not have them when they are most needed." Now, this was said by Dr. Tom Frieden, the director of the US CDC, back in 2009. Today, I will briefly explain how superbugs have come to be and why they are one of the biggest problems facing modern medicine today. Everyone should be doing their part to minimize their antibiotic use. This is the best way to limit the creation and spread of these antibiotics. Now, to recap from my last speech, where do superbugs come from and why are they important? Antibiotic resistant bacteria usually are not found in nature. Usually, regular bacteria mutate to form antibiotic resistant bacteria. Traditionally, bacteria multiply exponentially. They can actually multiply up to 720 times in 10 days, which is a ridiculously fast rate. Some of these mutations, when they divide, make the bacteria resistant to antibiotics. Then the bacteria resistant to the antibiotics multiply and pass the genes off to their offspring. Antibiotic resistant bacteria cause at least 2 million infections and 23,000 deaths a year. And superbugs are becoming bigger problems today than ever, and this is due to the overuse of antibiotics and antimicrobials, according to the Institute of Medicine in Washington, D.C. And let's take a look at this table very quickly. We are going to analyze two different pathogens, Klebsiella and MRSA, in Greece and the Netherlands. Greece's antibiotic usage is up to 3.5 times what it is in the Netherlands. 38 out of every 1,000 people daily use antibiotics compared to just 11 out of 1,000 people. And the rates of resistance for these antibiotic-resistant bacteria in these respective countries is much higher in Greece than the Netherlands. And this is due to the antibiotic usage in the Netherlands being much lower. This causes the natural selective strain on these antibiotic-resistant bacteria to be much lower in the Netherlands due to the fact that there are less antibiotics floating around the environment trying to kill them. And another great example of a case study is in France. They had the highest rates of multi-drug resistant streptococcus pneumoniae in 2002, and they also had the highest rate of antibiotic use in the EU. This led to a nationwide program to decrease antibiotic use. Between 2000 and 2009, their antibiotic use went down 21%. And between 2003 and 2007, the frequency of their penicillin resistance gradually decreased 16% in children and 11% in adults. Now, this number is crazy. Basically, what it's saying is the frequency of finding the antibiotic-resistant bacteria is lower with less antibiotic use in the area. And this is a big problem in the United States because 190 million doses of antibiotics are prescribed daily in hospitals, and 133 million courses of antibiotics are prescribed annually to non-hospitalized patients in the US. The rates of antibiotic-resistant bacteria is much higher in the United States because our antibiotic usage is very, very high. Now, I bet a lot of you guys are wondering why pharmaceutical companies aren't helping out. Jake, where are the new drugs? Why are they taking so long to test, and where are they? The development of these antibiotics is actually stalled due to economic and regulatory barriers. It takes a long time for the FDA to approve of drugs, and it takes a long time for these drugs to be clinically tested and then marketed and produced and sold. As of 2018, 13 of the 18 largest pharmaceutical companies have totally left the antibiotic field. And since then, 2 more companies have retreated from the antibiotic research and development. 2 more companies have filed for bankruptcy since then. No new classes of antibiotics for gram-negative bacteria have been found in over 40 years. And only 2 drugs with new microbial targets have been introduced since 1998. This is crazy that the pipeline for new antibiotics is this sparse. It just shows how big of a problem superbugs can be. Dr. Jean Patel from the CDC said that a fair number of new antibiotics actually start at smaller startup-sized pharmaceutical companies, which are then bought out by larger pharmaceutical companies. But since more pharmaceutical companies are leaving the field, it decreases the variety of new drugs that can be brought to the market. and sometimes the approval process of drugs takes upward of 2 decades to complete. Paratech Pharmaceuticals was working on a new antibiotic, but it took over 20 years to get this drug approved by the FDA. The costs to develop a new antibiotic drug are also equal, if not more expensive, to create than other therapeutic drug types like drugs to target diabetes, heart disease, chronic conditions. All of those drugs are much more profitable at the same time than antibiotics. So more pharmaceutical companies are leaving the antibiotic race in order to focus their attention on other areas of the market where they can be much more profitable. Now, just to conclude, I would like to leave you with another quote. In such a case, the thoughtless person playing with penicillin treatment is morally responsible for the death of a man who finally succumbs to infection with the penicillin-resistant organism. I hope that this evil can be averted. This was said by Alexander Fleming, the creator of penicillin. And penicillin was discovered over a century ago, and it just shows that this problem was known about back then, but nobody cared enough to take the time to limit their antibiotic use to make this problem go away. The best thing that you can do in order to limit the spread of this problem is to wait 48 to 72 hours after diagnosis to start taking antibiotics. This is because most bacterial infections can be fended off from the human body naturally and do not require antibiotics. Now, I'm not saying to not take antibiotics if you desperately need to. If your symptoms are terrible and you are physically dying or like need these antibiotics, by all means take them. Just be very conscious about how much antibiotics you're taking, and please take it safely and in the right amount. The superbug problem is considered a global health crisis, and the reasons are not hard to understand. Resistance within all microbial classes continue to grow by natural selection and evolution due to the fact that we are using so many antibiotics and antimicrobials. Pharmaceutical companies that have previously kept us ahead of bacterial resistance are now stalled due to economic and regulatory barriers and not creating any new antibiotics. We need to learn from other countries such as France and the Netherlands. We need to learn from other countries like the France and Netherlands to show that this problem can be averted. We just haven't cared enough to stop the problem. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Please stay healthy.